She was 31 years old. She was engaged. She was thousands of miles from anyone who loved her. And by the time the sun came up over Tanzania, Ashley Janae Rucker was a body in a foreign morgue while the man who said he loved her was still breathing, still talking, still posting online like nothing had happened. Now he is back on American soil. No handcuffs, no charges, no press conference, just a plain ticket, a cleared name, and a silence so loud it sounds like a verdict. And the worst part, the part that is going to make some of you uncomfortable before this video is over, is that her own community is split right down the middle on whether she even deserves a fight. That is what we are unpacking today. Not just how Ashley died, but why a movement that should be screaming her name is whispering it. Why a fiancé walks free while a family buries questions instead of answers. And why this case might be the most important warning shot to Black women in America that nobody is willing to fire out loud. I want you to do something for me before we go any deeper. I want you to look at the like button, and I want you to actually press it, because the algorithm punishes the cases that are messy. It rewards the ones that are clean. White girl missing in a national park, blonde hair, cheerleader smile. That case rides the front page for 6 weeks. A complicated Black woman who said complicated things, who loved a complicated man, who died in a complicated country. That case dies in a back corner of the internet where the truth goes to rot. Subscribe, hit the bell, and stay with me, because we are not in the business of clean cases here. We are in the business of the truth that does not fit on a thumbnail. Let me set the scene the way it actually happened, not the sanitized way it has been served to you. Ashley and her fiancé Joe McCann boarded a flight that was supposed to be the kind of trip you brag about for the rest of your life. Tanzania, safari country, engagement euphoria, the kind of vacation where the photos do half the marriage proposal for you. They landed. They moved through the country. And then somewhere between the laughter and the boarding pass home, Ashley stopped breathing. The exact location has not been confirmed. The exact hour has not been confirmed. The official cause of death, if there even is one in writing, has not been released to the public in any way that satisfies a single person paying attention. What we have is silence dressed up as a report. Here is what we do know, and I want you to lock this in because it matters. Joe McCann was detained by Tanzanian authorities. Detained. That is not a casual word. Foreign police in a country that depends on tourist dollars do not casually grab an American citizen off the street and put him in a holding room for laughs. They had questions. They had concerns. They had something. And then, just as suddenly as he was held, he was let go. No charges filed. No public explanation. No transparency about what shifted between the moment they thought he was a problem and the moment they decided he was free to fly home. He boarded a plane. He came back. And while Ashley's mother was picking out a casket, he was scrolling his feed like a man on a long weekend. Now think about that for 1 second longer than is comfortable. Your fiancé just died on a continent neither of you grew up on. You are the only American witness. You are the only person who knows the last words that came out of her mouth. And the first thing you do when you get home is not stand in front of a camera in tears begging the public for help. The first thing you do is post like nothing happened. Then wait until the day of her funeral, the literal day they are lowering her casket into the ground, to release a statement carefully shaped by what sounds an awful lot like legal counsel. That is not grief. Grief does not wait for a press release. Grief does not check the calendar. But here is where this story turns into something bigger than a true crime case. And this is the part nobody on YouTube wants to touch because it costs subscribers. Ashley Janae Rucker had a digital footprint, and parts of that footprint were ugly. People saved screenshots before the accounts went private. People archived posts before the family scrubbed what they could. And what those archives show is a young woman who, at various points in her public life, said things about Black men that read like a recruitment pamphlet for racial self-loathing. She compared. She ranked. She elevated whiteness as escape and framed her own community as a lower rung she had climbed off of. She was, in the language of this generation, performing her exit. And her audience for that performance was not Black women looking for solidarity. It was a man with white skin and a wedding ring picked out, and a community of strangers clapping for her departure. I want to be careful here, because there is a lazy version of this conversation where we just call her a pick-me and slam the casket shut. That is not what we do on this channel. We do the harder thing. We ask why. Why does a brilliant, beautiful, 31-year-old black woman build a public personality on dragging black men, on broadcasting that she is not like the others, on making her relationship with a white man into a trophy held up against the people she came from. The answer is not that she was simply mean. The answer is that something in her life taught her that survival required distance. Somewhere along the way, the message landed that the only safe black woman is the one a certain kind of white man is willing to vouch for. And once you internalize that lie, your social media stops being a diary and starts being an audition. Every post is a resume to a tribe that will never actually hire you full-time. This is not me psychoanalyzing a stranger for fun. This is me describing a pattern that has existed in this country for as long as this country has existed. The black woman who escapes the block. The black man who marries up to feel safe. The light-skinned cousin who says she is mixed instead of black. The cousin who picks the suburb over the city and then talks about the city like it raised her wrong. None of them woke up one morning and decided to hate themselves for sport. They were taught, drop by drop, that proximity to whiteness is proximity to safety. And the cruelty of that lesson is that the safety never actually arrives. It is always one more performance away. One more post. One more man. One more shrinking. And then one day you are in a country you cannot pronounce, with a man who never once asked you to stop talking that way about your own people, because in his private mind he agreed, and the bill comes due. Here is the line I want you to write down somewhere if you are watching this with a notebook in your lap. Their view of your community is low, and because you are part of that community, their view of you is also low. You are not the exception. You are the temporary exemption. And exemptions get revoked the second they stop being convenient. That is the entire psychology of the racist romantic partner in one sentence. And Ashley is not the first black woman who learned it the hardest way, and unless something changes, she will not be the last. Let me tell you how this pattern actually unfolds in real time, because if even one woman watching this recognizes herself in what I am about to describe, this video did its job. Stage 1 is the chase. He pursues you with an intensity that feels different from anything you have known. He calls you a queen. He says you are not like the other ones. He pays for things. He shows you off. You feel chosen, and chosen is a drug, especially for a woman who has been told her whole life by music, by movies, by every casting director in Hollywood, that she is a side character in her own love story. Stage 2 is the comfort. The ring goes on. The lease gets signed. The bedroom becomes an apartment, becomes a life. And as comfort grows, the mask slips. The little jokes start. Just little ones at first. A comment about a black coworker. A snicker about a rapper on the radio. A sigh when a black politician is on the news. He is testing the water. He is checking how loud the alarm is in your house. And when you laugh, even uncomfortably, even just to keep the peace, you have given him your answer. The alarm is off. He can come in. Stage 3 is the escalation. The jokes become opinions. The opinions become rants. The rants become a worldview that he expresses around you with the confidence of a man who knows his audience is captured. And you sit there and you tell yourself the same thing every black woman in this situation has told herself since the beginning of this experiment. He does not mean me. He means the other ones. He means the loud ones, the ghetto ones, the ones with the names he cannot pronounce. He means the ones I already publicly distanced myself from on the timeline. I am safe. I am the good one. I am the exception. And every time you tell yourself that, you are signing another page of the contract that says you do not respect yourself enough to demand respect from him. He is taking notes. He is filing it away. He is calibrating exactly how much you will tolerate before you push back. And the answer he keeps writing down is more. Stage 4 is the leverage. Something goes wrong. It always does. Money tightens. Another woman shows up in the messages. He wants out. You want answers. And in that moment, the dynamic that was hiding underneath the relationship the entire time finally walks out into the daylight. He has the police on speed dial and the assumption of innocence stitched into his skin. You have a 911 call where the dispatcher already decided who is the threat before the squad car pulls up. He has lawyers his family pays for. You have a tired public defender and a grandmother praying. He has the benefit of every doubt the system was built to extend. You have the burden of every stereotype the system was built to enforce. And if something darker happens, if a vacation goes wrong, if a hike goes sideways, if a hotel room becomes a crime scene, The leverage gap that was theoretical for 3 years becomes the difference between a funeral and a trial. That is the architecture. That is what we are looking at when we look at Ashley. I am not telling you that Joe McCann definitely did something to her. I do not have that. The Tanzanian government does not appear to have it either, or if they did, they let it go. What I am telling you is that the architecture of vulnerability was already in place long before they ever bought plane tickets. She had been performing her isolation publicly for years. He had been watching her perform it without ever once saying, "Babe, why do you talk about your own people like that? It concerns me." He never said it because he agreed. And in that silence, in that quiet co-signing of her self-hatred, a relationship became a recipe. Now let me pull back the camera, because Ashley is not the first. She is part of a list, and that list is one of the most damning indictments of how this country treats black women under suspicious circumstances. Pull up the name Shanquella Robinson, 25 years old, Cabo San Lucas. Went on a girls' trip in October of 2022 with people she called friends. Was dead within 24 hours. The story they fed her family was alcohol poisoning. The autopsy when her body got home said something else entirely. Severe spinal cord injury. Atlas dislocation. Her neck was broken. And a video surfaced, an actual video, of her being beaten by one of those friends while the rest filmed it like content. Not one person in that room has been charged. They flew home. They went back to their lives. Mexico called it a homicide on the death certificate. The United States never extradited anyone. Her mother is still on this earth right now begging for justice, while the people who watched her daughter die are blocking her on Instagram. Pull up Kenneka Jenkins, 19 years old. Found in a hotel freezer in Rosemont, Illinois, in the early hours of a September morning in 2017. The official story said she wandered in alone. The footage that exists is incomplete. The footage that should exist apparently does not. The investigation was wrapped up so fast you could feel the rug burn. And every black mother in America knew, in their bones, that if that had been a white teenager from a wealthy suburb, that hotel would have been turned inside out by federal agents inside of 48 hours. Instead, Kenneka became a hashtag for a season and then a memory. Her mother is still asking the same questions she was asking in 2017. Pull up Lauren Smithfields. Pull up Toyin Salo. Pull up the names you did not learn because the news cycle did not learn them either. There is a pattern. The pattern is not subtle. It is so obvious it embarrasses the people whose job it is to investigate. Black women die in ways that do not add up. The investigations move at the speed of paperwork instead of the speed of urgency. The media gives the story a polite 3 days. And then everybody collectively agrees to look the other way because looking head-on would force a conversation this country still refuses to have. Now into that pattern walks Ashley Janae Rucker. And here is where the conversation gets dangerous, because for the first time in a long time, the community is genuinely split. There are voices saying she is one of ours. Every black woman is one of ours, and we ride for her no matter what her timeline looked like. And there are other voices, hurt voices, voices of black men who saw her posts when she was alive, saying we will not be guilted into rallying for someone who built her brand on calling us inferior. Both of those reactions come from real places. Both of those reactions are rooted in pain that has been earned across generations. But only one of those reactions actually serves justice, and I am going to tell you which one, and I am going to tell you why. You do not have to like the choices someone made to demand the truth about how they died. You do not have to agree with every word she ever typed to insist that her family deserves answers. You do not have to forgive her to refuse to forgive a system that lets her fiancé walk through customs like a man returning from a business trip. The whole point of justice is that it does not depend on the perfection of the victim. The minute you make justice conditional on whether the dead person was likable, you have already lost. Because none of us, not one of us, has a timeline clean enough to survive that test. We have all said something we regret. We have all believed something embarrassing for a season. We have all been the person we are now ashamed of. The difference between us and Ashley is that we got the chance to grow. She did not. Somebody, or something, or some country with a paper-thin investigation robbed her of that chance. And the question is not whether she earned the right to grow. The question is who took it from her. Let me be specific about what we do not know, because honesty about the gaps is more powerful than confidence about the conclusions. We do not know the timeline of her last 24 hours. We do not know who saw her last besides the man she was engaged to. We do not know what hotel staff observed in the days before. We do not know if there was an argument the night before. We do not know what the autopsy in the United States revealed because the family has not made it public, and that silence can mean 100 different things. It can mean inconclusive. It can mean a finding that does not fit either narrative cleanly. It can mean strategic legal patience while a civil case is built. We simply do not know. And the absence of those answers is not neutral. It is engineered. Somebody benefits from that absence, and it is not Ashley, and it is not her mother. What we do know is the behavior of a man after his fiancée dies. And his behavior is the loudest piece of evidence in this entire case, because nobody can take it back. Most innocent grieving partners cannot get out of bed for a week. Most innocent grieving partners are screaming into a microphone begging anyone with information to come forward. Most innocent grieving partners are not waiting for a funeral to release a carefully worded statement. Most innocent grieving partners are not posting unrelated content on social media while their loved one is in a body bag in a foreign country. I am not saying this proves anything in a court of law. I am saying any human being with a working heart can read this body language and know something is wrong. So what happens now? What are the actual moves left on the board for Ashley's family? The answer is harder than it sounds because the legal options narrow considerably the second a death happens outside U.S. jurisdiction. The Tanzanian system has done what it is going to do, which appears to be very little. The American system cannot prosecute a crime that occurred on foreign soil unless very specific federal statutes apply, and even then the cooperation of the foreign government is not guaranteed. What is left is the civil track. A wrongful death suit on American soil. A lower burden of proof. Preponderance of evidence instead of beyond a reasonable doubt. It will not put him in a cell, but it can put him under oath. And under oath, in a deposition, with an attorney across the table who has spent 2 years preparing, sometimes the truth slips out in a way that no Tanzanian holding room ever could pry loose. The other lane is public pressure. And this is where you come in, whether you want to or not. The cases that get reopened are the cases the public refuses to bury. Gabby Petito got justice because the internet would not let her name die. Ahmaud Arbery got a trial because a video would not stay buried. Public attention is the only resource on this earth that scales faster than money, and it is the one resource Ashley's family has access to right now. Which means every share, every comment, every uncomfortable conversation about this case is a brick in the pressure wall that eventually forces a system to look up from its desk. You do not have to agree with everything she ever said to share the link to her story. You just have to agree that her family deserves to sleep through one full night again. And right now they cannot. Let me back up for a second and tell you something the cable news version of this story will never tell you, because it does not fit on a Chiron. Tanzania is not a random crime scene. Tanzania is a country with a tourism economy that depends, almost entirely, on the impression that nothing bad ever happens there to the people flying in with American passports. That impression is not free. It is maintained. It is curated. It is a brand. And anybody who has ever worked a tourism economy in any developing nation will tell you the same thing off the record. When something does happen, the first instinct of the local system is not to chase the truth. The first instinct is to manage the headline. Because a headline that says American woman dies under suspicious circumstances at Safari Resort is not a story about Ashley. In their eyes, it is a story about cancellations, about refunds, about every honeymoon couple in Texas who suddenly decides to go to Costa Rica instead. So the machine moves, but it does not move toward justice. It moves toward closure. And closure and justice are not the same word. Now layer on top of that the language barrier, the bureaucratic distance between a Tanzanian police precinct and an American family in a state of shock, and the simple geographic reality that nobody from her side of the family was ever in that hotel room with her. Every piece of evidence that exists is filtered through a system that has zero structural incentive to be transparent. Every witness statement is in a language her mother does not speak. Every receipt, every camera, every minute of hallway footage, every key card swipe, every room service ticket sits in a building thousands of miles away, behind a desk staffed by a person whose paycheck depends on the country looking safe. That is not a conspiracy theory. That is just how tourism economies are built. And it means the truth, even if somebody at the local level wanted to dig for it, has to fight gravity to surface. There is a phrase in international criminal law that you do not hear often unless you live in this world. and it is the phrase forum shopping. Forum shopping is when somebody intentionally chooses the legal jurisdiction that is most favorable to the outcome they want. Wealthy people forum shop for divorces. Corporations forum shop for lawsuits. And, on rare and chilling occasions, individuals forum shop for crimes. They pick the country, the city, the very hotel, where the investigation will be the weakest. They pick the place where their passport carries the most weight. They pick the place where the local system can be navigated, persuaded, or simply outweighted until everyone with a question has run out of money and energy. I am not stating, on this channel, that Joe McCann did this. I do not have proof of intent. What I am telling you is that any thorough investigation of a death like Ashley's must, at minimum, ask the question of how Tanzania ended up on the itinerary in the first place. Whose idea was it? Whose passport stamp shows up earlier in the relationship? Who picked the resort? Who picked the dates? Who paid? Those answers exist on credit card statements that nobody in the public has seen yet, and somewhere in those statements is a story we are not being told. I want to talk for a minute about what happens to the body of an American citizen who dies abroad, because most people watching this video have no idea, and after this case, I think every black woman in America deserves to. The moment a U.S. citizen dies in a foreign country, the United States Embassy in that country is supposed to step in. They contact the family. They help arrange the return of remains. They liaise with local authorities. They produce something called a report of death of a U.S. citizen abroad, which is essentially the foreign equivalent of a death certificate that U.S. courts will recognize. That document, in theory, is a public record. The cause of death listed on it is a matter of consular routine. So one of the questions every reporter, every advocate, every podcaster covering this case should be asking, loudly and on camera, is what does the report of death say? Has it been filed? Has it been delivered to the family? And if it is not, why not? Because a missing piece of paper from the State Department is not a small thing. It is a clue. Then there is the autopsy question, and I have hinted at it already, but let me be explicit. When a body comes back to the United States from a foreign country, the family has the right to commission a second autopsy from a U.S. medical examiner. They do this when they do not trust the original findings. They do this when they suspect the local system buried something. The fact that we have heard reports the family pursued this avenue tells us they did not trust what they were given in Tanzania. The fact that the results of that second autopsy have not been released publicly tells us one of three things, and I want you to consider all three honestly. Option 1. The autopsy was inconclusive, and the family is sitting with results that do not give them the answer they hoped for. Option 2. The autopsy revealed something potentially actionable, and the family's attorneys are deliberately holding it back to preserve the strength of a future civil suit. You do not show your hand at the poker table before the betting closes. Option 3. The autopsy revealed something the family is, for personal reasons we may never know, choosing to keep private. None of those three options resolves the case. But all three of them tell us this story is not over, no matter how badly Joe McCann's social media calendar would like it to be. Let me bring something else into this conversation that I do not think has been said enough. The role of Ashley's friends. Where are they? Where are her best friends, her bridesmaids, her sorority sisters if she had any, her closest co-workers, the women who would have been screaming her name from rooftops if she had simply been carjacked outside a Target in Houston? Why is the inner circle so quiet? Now, there are gentle reasons that could explain the silence. Grief makes people unable to speak. Lawyers tell families to keep relatives away from cameras. People closest to a tragedy often retreat from the noise instead of adding to it. Those are real and human reasons. But there are less gentle possibilities too. It is possible that the public posture Ashley took, the public separation from her community, also affected the friendships in her life. It is possible the inner circle thinned long before she got on that plane. It is possible the women who would have been her loudest defenders had already been quietly pushed to the margins of her life by a fiancé who did not want them around. We have seen this pattern in domestic abuse cases for decades. The first thing a controlling partner does is shrink the support network. The second thing they do is make the survivor feel like the shrinkage was her own choice. By the time anybody on the outside notices, she is already alone in a way that is hard to reverse. Whether or not that happened to Ashley, I cannot tell you. I am simply pointing at the silence and asking you to notice it with me. I also want to address, head on, the people in the comments who are going to type the words "she had it coming." I see you. I am not going to pretend I do not. I have read enough comment sections in my life to know exactly which sentences are about to be posted under this video. And I want to say to you, with as much patience as I can locate, you are part of the architecture this case exposes. When you say a black woman who said insulting things about black men deserved to die in a hotel room thousands of miles from her mother, you are not protecting black men. Let me speak directly to the black women watching, because this case is not abstract for you. This case is a memo. If you travel internationally, and please do, the world is yours. Write down a few rules in permanent ink. Share your full itinerary with somebody who loves you. Not a vague version. The full version. Hotel names, flight numbers, contact information for everyone you are with. Register with the United States Embassy in whatever country you land in, every single time, even if it feels paranoid, especially if it feels paranoid. Check in daily. Use a code word for trouble. Establish, before the trip, that if you say a certain phrase, the person on the other end of the phone calls the embassy without asking another question. Trust your instincts the first time, not the third time. The first time you feel the air in the room change, that is the time. Not after you have rationalized it twice. And when it comes to who you travel with, especially early in a relationship, especially if there are warning signs you have been making excuses for, understand that distance from American jurisdiction is distance from American protection. He does not become a different person at 30,000 feet. He becomes the same person, just with fewer people watching. Domestic violence statistics are already terrifying inside the United States. Outside of it, with a passport you cannot easily replace. In a country where the embassy closes at 5 and your phone does not work the same way, those statistics get worse. Not because the world is more dangerous than home. Because the safety net you assume exists at home does not necessarily travel with you. On interracial relationships, because I know this is the part where the comments are going to set the channel on fire, I am not telling you who to love. I have said this on this channel 100 times, and I will say it 100 more. Love who loves you. Genuine love crosses every line this country tried to draw. And the people I have personally watched be saved by interracial love include some of the most important people in my own life. There is a coach who pulled me out of a hole I did not have the language to climb out of. There is a mentor in a white coat who wrote a letter that opened a door I could not have opened on my own. Those people did not perform their goodness. They did not post a black square. They simply showed up, quietly, repeatedly, in the rooms where decisions about my future were being made. That is what real allyship looks like, and it absolutely exists. But there is another category, and you have to know how to spot it because the category does not always announce itself. The man who fetishizes you while disrespecting your origin. The woman who collects you the way somebody collects a story to tell at brunch. The partner who never once corrects their own family at Thanksgiving when something racist comes out of an uncle's mouth, but expects you to keep showing up with a smile and a casserole. The partner whose compliments to you are always at the expense of someone else who looks like you. You are so articulate compared to. You are so beautiful for a. You are not like the other. Those are not compliments. Those are warnings dressed up in a bow tie. Here's the test. A partner who actually respects you also respects the people you came from. They do not need you to apologize for your culture. They are curious about it. They show up at the cookout, and they listen more than they talk. They check their own family before they check you. They never, ever, encourage you to make a public spectacle of distancing yourself from your community. Because a partner whose love is real does not benefit from your isolation. Only a partner whose love is conditional benefits from you being alone in the world with no one to call when things go bad. Ashley, by every public account, was alone in the world in the way that matters most. Her timeline had pushed away the very community that, in a different version of this story, would already be marching with her face on a sign. Her brand was her separation. Her separation was her stage. And when the curtain came down in Tanzania, there was nobody in the wings to catch her. That is the lesson. Not that she deserved it. Not even close. But that the architecture she built, post by post, made it easier for somebody to harm her with less consequence. Predators are not stupid. They are observant. And the most observant thing they look for is a target who has already been abandoned by her own people, often by her own hand. Which brings me to the part one I've been working up to this entire video, and I need you to hear this with both ears. There is no way for a black woman to truly respect herself while publicly degrading black men for the approval of strangers. There is no way for a black man to truly respect himself while publicly degrading black women for the approval of an algorithm. That behavior, on either side, is not an opinion. It is a wound walking around with a microphone. And while we cannot fix every wound, we can stop rewarding the ones that are bleeding the loudest. We can stop clicking. We can stop sharing. We can stop letting the worst version of our community become the version that goes viral. Because every time one of those takes goes viral, somebody, somewhere, is taking notes for a relationship that will end on a different continent. And to be very clear, none of that means Ashley deserved what happened. Let me say it again so the screenshot does not lie. Nothing she ever posted earned her death. Nothing. Her wrong opinions did not cancel out her right to come home alive. The fact that she said hurtful things does not subtract a single percentage point from the outrage we should feel that her fiancé is back in this country sleeping in a bed while she is in the ground. Both things can be true at the same time. We are grown enough to hold two truths in the same hand. She was wrong about her people. And what happened to her was wrong. And somebody owes her family answers they have not been given. I want to spend the last few minutes of this video talking about what we do from here, because outrage without direction is just noise, and we do not do noise on this channel. First, we keep the name in the rotation. Ashley Janae Rucker. Say it. Type it. Tag it. Make it impossible for the algorithm to forget. The cases that get justice are the cases that refuse to stop being a search term. Second, we contact the State Department. Not in a vague way. Specifically, the Bureau of Consular Affairs has an office that handles American citizens who die abroad. They are required to provide certain documents to the family. Demand that they do their job out loud, in writing, with a paper trail. Third, we support the family financially if a civil case is filed. Lawyers are not free. Investigators are not free. The truth, in this country, is unfortunately something that costs money, and the people with money to bury the truth are already moving. The people with money to dig it up have to move faster. Fourth, and this is the cultural one, we have to start having honest conversations inside our own community about what we tolerate from each other online. Not censorship. Honesty. When a black woman starts building her brand on dragging black men, somebody who actually loves her is supposed to pull her aside before the audience grows past the point of return. When a black man starts building his platform on humiliating black women for clicks, somebody who actually loves him is supposed to do the same thing. We have outsourced that conversation to comment sections, and comment sections are the worst possible place to be raised. We have to take it back into living rooms, into family group chats, into churches, into barbershops, into hair salons, into the spaces where love is actually capable of correcting somebody before the internet finishes them. Fifth, and this is the one I want to leave you with, we have to make room for people to be wrong before they are dead. We have to build a community that is generous enough to accept that a 31-year-old woman might still be in the middle of figuring out who she is. That a young man saying ignorant things on Twitter might be one good conversation away from being a different person at 35. We owe each other the runway to grow. And when somebody is denied that runway, when somebody is taken before they ever get to publicly become the version of themselves that would have apologized, we owe them the dignity of the doubt. We owe them the assumption that, given more time, she would have learned. He would have learned. We would have learned together. Ashley Janae Rucker did not get more time. The clock stopped on a continent her ancestors were stolen from, in the arms of a man whose people did the stealing, and the historical irony of that is so heavy it could collapse a building. We do not have to be poetic about it. We just have to be honest. A young black woman is dead. The man who was with her is free. The country that claimed her body is not investigating with anything resembling urgency. The country that claims her citizenship is not pressing the country that has her file. And the community that should be a wall of noise around her family is, instead, having a debate about whether her old tweets disqualify her from being mourned. That is not justice. That is theater. And we are tired of being the audience. So this is where I leave you for now, and I want you to do 3 things before the next video drops. 1. Share this video with somebody who needs to hear it, especially the women in your life who travel internationally with men they have not been with very long. 2. Drop her name in the comments along with 1 sentence about why complicated cases still deserve uncomplicated advocacy. 3. Come back, because this story is not finished and I am not done telling it. The autopsy results will eventually come out. The civil case, if it comes, will eventually be filed. Joe McCann's silence will eventually break, because silence always does when enough light is on it. And when those moments come, this channel is going to be in the room with the receipts, the timeline, and the same uncomfortable honesty that brought you here in the first place. To the family, if any version of this video ever finds you, I want you to know something. The internet can be cruel. The community can be confused. The algorithm can be unfair. But there are people watching this right now, hundreds of thousands of them eventually, who will not let her name die, who will not let her case become a footnote, and who will keep showing up in your inbox, in the State Department's inbox, in the press's inbox, until somebody is forced to do the job they swore they would do. Your daughter, your sister, your friend, the imperfect, complicated, full human being she was, is not forgotten in the rooms where this matters. Not on this channel. Not under this thumbnail. Not while we are still breathing. Malcolm said the chickens come home to roost. He was talking about the weight of a country's choices coming back around. But he never meant that the people who said the wrong thing had to die before the lesson landed. We can do better than that. We can correct each other while we are still alive to be corrected. We can love each other loud enough to outshout the algorithms that profit from our division. We can build a community where statelessness is not an option, because nobody who is one of us is ever truly alone, even if their timeline says otherwise. That is the world Ashley deserved. That is the world her death is asking us to finally get serious about building. Hit the like. Hit the subscribe. Turn the notifications on. Drop her name in the comments. And come back tomorrow, because tomorrow there will be new information, and the day after that there will be more, and we are going to chase this thing all the way to whatever passes for an answer in a system designed to produce more questions. This is your reminder that the truth, even when it is uncomfortable, even when it splits a community, even when it forces you to defend somebody you would not have agreed with at a dinner table, is still the truth. And the truth is the only thing on this earth strong enough to bring the dead a little bit of peace. Rest easy, Ashley. We are still in the fight. The fight is still loud. And the fight is not even close to over.